working? Yes. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Baruch. Thank you, STRUT. A couple of other thank yous I really want to extend. The San Francisco Arts Council and the California Arts Council have been really steadfast supporters. SOMARTS has been our home where we have gathered and printed for like 6 months, which is really amazing. Yerba Buena Center for the Arts and also GIFTA have also provided us funds for things like buying a button maker so we can have button activities. And then lastly, the Queer Cultural Center has been wonderful support in many ways over the entire lifespan of the Queer Ancestors Project, which is about 12 years now, which is really exciting. So, but most of all, I would like to thank the artists who are here tonight, who I was just absolutely dazzled by your perseverance, dedication, creativity, willingness to risk, willingness to be vulnerable, and your ability to connect with each other. This has just been really beautiful and moving and wonderful to see. So thank you for that. And thank you all for coming tonight. You really complete the circle for the artists. You let the artists know that there are eyes eager to see their creations. There are minds eager to hear their words. There are hearts welcoming them. So could you please give them a really warm welcome, and then we'll begin the panel. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start. If you could kindly say your name and your pronouns. Okay?
Okay. Hi, I'm...
Oh, we're probably too close. That's my
Yeah.
fault. There we go.
I'm Sasha, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Rawley, she, her as well.
Let's swap.
Cairo, daney, pronoun.
Naseem. Hello?
Yeah.
Naseem, they, them pronouns. Karishma, any pronouns. Indigo, they, them.
Jason, take them pronouns.
Jasmine Pomar, I use she, her pronouns.
Marion, I use they, them. daney, I use they, them pronouns.
Great. So the artists themselves developed questions to answer today, and I think it's pretty gorgeous that the first question they wanted to answer was what brought you joy in the program. So Dean, would you like to start us off?
Yeah. Hi, again, I'm daney, and something that brought me joy during Queer Ancestors Project was, I think, connecting with all these really amazing artists and wonderful people. I feel like I was actually able to see myself as an artist, being helped by this community, which is something that I feel like I've never actually been able to do for myself. So I think that is something that brought me joy, and something I'm in like, a lot of appreciation for everyone here.
Something that brought me joy was that, so like the daney, the people in this group, there are just certain aspects of creating that only queer and other trans people can like get into with you. So,
Hi, Jasmine. There's this moment when you're printmaking and you run your print through the press. You have to strip the paper away from the plate from which you print it. And I think in the opening of the show, I compared it to like unwrapping a piece of candy. Because there's all this work that goes into it. And then all of a sudden you kind of reach this point at which you can see it and you peel it off and it's like it all comes together all at once and suddenly you realize all of your work and it's very fun. Everybody would like clap.
Jason here. So we actually were asked this question during the reception a few weeks ago, and I like panicked on the spot and just sort of said a throwaway answer. So I'm really happy to have the second chance again to share. For me, a lot of things brought me joy, but one moment in particular was early on in the workshop. One of the nights we were asked to think about who our ancestors are and to call them into the space. At that time, we were at Soma Arts in the studio, and I couldn't really think of anyone to call in. But at the last second, when it was finally my turn, somehow like it hit me to invite my two grandfathers who passed away into the space. And so I got to, say their names, share their names with the class, and call them in. And it felt really special because it was sort of like the first time where my family sort of met my queerness, and like they got to meet my gay friends and see my gay art. And so it was like a really cool moment where I could like really feel them and their presence. And it was like really easy to imagine them sitting there around the table with us. And so, really thankful for QAP and for the opportunities that help us like cultivate these relationships with our ancestors.
That was a really beautiful answer. I will also kind of repeat my answer from the reception, but one of my favorite moments that just even when I look back on it makes me smile is that we had a bunch of bubbles, and one time during QAP we went outside and we blew the bubbles together, and just that moment of childish joy. I feel like this whole program has been very healing for my inner child in a lot of ways, and a lot of the people that I've met here, they have just made my life so much more vibrant. Just, getting like places to thrift and new music to listen to and makeup and all these things, like I really appreciate, and it's brought me a lot of joy.
That's very cute. I like the bubbles too. Karishma again. So I want to say all of it, but I feel like that's kind of a cheaty answer to say I loved every single moment I had in this program. So I also will pick something very specific. And I'm going to try and set the scene for you because you weren't there. And it feels like one of those you had to be there moments. And so I'm going to pick specifically, like, we would pick colors, right? And it would be as a group. And every week it would kind of be like, obviously not me every week because we would alternate, but there was like a schedule, like, okay, who's printing this week? And I'd get very excited and I'd ask everyone, oh, are you printing this week? And if I didn't ask, someone had asked me. And if they weren't going at that same week as I was, I would get very excited looking ahead at when that next date was, right? And then in the meantime, we get to pick colors. And it's very special to kind of argue about which colors you think look best and how to accommodate everyone, and like get beautiful colors that match. And I always picked pukey green. It didn't happen. That's okay. And I think that's still my favorite color. But I print at home sometimes, and so I get to pick colors myself, and it's very easy, and I can do pukey green whenever I want. But it's something very special to get to pick colors with my friends, and enjoy those moments where we sit there and take way too long arguing over colors. And I think that was a very special time for me, and I miss it like every time I pick colors by myself.
I definitely wish we did more green, even though like so many of us like green, we only did it like twice maybe. This is the same, and what brought me joy in the program was like, I don't remember what I said last time because a lot of things brought me joy, but I'll just say something new. I think it's just like the constant practice of celebration and affirmation. I think that with the presence of capitalism, there's this sentiment that good art is art that sells, and that's not necessarily true. And throughout, the program, like even starting from the point of like brainstorming our ideas and sharing it with each other, like there's always oohs and ahs and oh my gosh, like this is so good, and just like constant encouragement of each other to like keep pushing forward and just get creative and make art for art's sake. And I think that was something that brought me a lot of joy because I kind of felt stuck in my art making before, and like once I was immersed in the program, like I really felt like a constant urge to create.
thanks to all of y'all's lovely minds. And yeah, just like the affirmations that came from sharing ideas and like the constant like excitement when we like peeled our prints off the press, and then now we have this amazing show where we get to be celebrated as artists, and it just feels really good. And I feel so grateful to have been able to experience this celebration and affirmation with folks in my group.
This is Cairo. I want to echo everything that everyone said, so I don't have to repeat it, but I totally would. My thing is a very specific moment. I think it was Thanksgiving. I think it was a potluck. And I was super excited because we get to eat snacks, and they're usually from Trader Joe's. And this time it was people bringing their own snacks, and I was like, okay, cool, there's chocolate chip cookies. And the next one was like, okay, there's cookie dough. And then someone made a pecan pie. I was like, okay, cool, what's next? And it was like some other kind of pie. And someone made these really cool pastries. I'm like, okay, cool, something savory. They were guava. And it just turned out every single person brought desserts because that's what queer people do, I guess. And the lesson learned is you should make a spreadsheet if you want to follow the curriculum. But I remember the joy of just all of us sitting around eating dessert like it was our dinner. It was just very fun.
Hi, this is Rawley. I think what comes to mind when I think of what brought me joy was just how we were able to sort of energize each other every Wednesday night. We would always start with a check-in, and everyone would talk about all the things that were difficult in the week and how we were tired and things like that, which is super valid because we all like work and everything, life gets you down. But by the end of the night, every night, everyone would just be so excited because we spent so much time working together, and we were all, as everyone said, cheering each other on about our prints and things. And I would always leave every night at like 10 p.m. feeling like raring to go and not tired anymore. And so I just loved being in everyone's presence, making art together, and just feeling like the day sort of started over when we arrived at SOMARTS every week.
Hi, this is Sasha again. Moments that brought me joy were definitely like sharing all of our prints together. And this was like, we would do this every print night where we would have all the prints on the table that we made that night. And Katie would flip through each one. And after each flip through, there would be a crowd of ooh, and ah. And it's like what everyone said, like that affirmation and support really encouraged me and inspired me.
Yay. Okay, let's see if our mics can coexist. This is Katie again. Thank you, everyone. That was joyful to hear. Now, I'd like to invite you to talk about one of your prints and kind of go in deep about what your process was or how you connected with ancestors or anything you'd like to say about one of your prints. And just a heads up, everyone, this is going to be really delicious. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about my print called I Was Dancing in the Lesbian Bar, which is that one right there. So throughout Queer Ancestors Project, I got to connect with Ruth Mahaney, who worked at Modern Times Bookstore on Valencia Street. She was working there for probably 35 years. And yeah, so Valencia Street used to be a lesbian and queer haven back in the 70s, 80s, and I would even argue 90s. But Ruth told me the story about this bar called Kelly's, which was on 20th and Cap, which was a lesbian bar. And she told me that the bars would often get police, like one policeman who would come in and get paid off. But in this story, She said the lesbian who was the guard held a remote control or like a switch for the jukebox. And this is because dancing in the lesbian bar was illegal because cabaret licenses were hard to get and expensive, and there was a lot of bureaucracy involved. And so this guard was a bull dyke, big bull dyke she describes, and I just got this image of her hands behind her back holding this remote with a switch to turn off the jukebox, and I wanted to showcase that, like she was the guardian of this bar, of this space. And yeah, I want you guys to all read more about that. I quoted Ruth's story, and it was a really special one, and special to hear from her. Yeah.
Hi, this is Rawley, and I'm going to be talking about this piece here. It's the reason that I'm holding it in a little sheet is because it's downstairs, so you can't see it on the wall. But I encourage you all to check out all the pieces on the stairs and downstairs because they're all equally as juicy as these ones up here. But this piece is called Down Here in the Bottom, parentheses, Sula. And when I think about my art practice, I've been thinking a lot about the way that inspiration is really cyclical for me, and the way that I feel that Black women artists are so connected throughout history. And a lot of my inspiration comes from the work of other Black women artists, and in this one specifically, it's named after both a song by Jamila Woods, who is a queer Black singer, and the book Sula by Toni Morrison. And so Jamila Woods has always been a really big inspiration for me. I really love how she taps into ancestry in her work and how she sort of retells famous stories through lyricism and song. And when I heard this song, I instantly went to go read the book by Toni Morrison, and just fell in love with it and the idea that even though it's not necessarily explicitly queer, it has a lot of those queer undertones, which in turn inspired Jamila to make her music about that as well. And so I just love to think about the idea that in the grand scheme of art history, there, instead of it being a line, like a timeline, it's like a circle, and we all sort of come back around to look and to engage with and to obsess over and fall in love with each other's work, only to continue that cycle of inspiration. And so I was calling that in when I was making this piece, thinking about Toni and thinking about Jamila and thinking about hopefully the future young Black women artists who might see my piece and get even further down the rabbit hole of the cyclical inspiration. And just thinking about how all art comes back around and it never really dies, even when they are our ancestors, and how we can always call them back in when we are producing our own work in the future.
That was really amazing. This is Cairo. I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to talk about this print Bojum Ching, and I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are a 14-year-old person, and you're in China, and you want to join the communists, like the People's Liberation Army, and they take women, but for some reason, you tell them that you're a boy, and that your name is Bo Hu, and you are actually really good at like doing army stuff, like you win battles, like you have huge like moments of courage, and you get hella medals and stuff. And your comrades like think you're amazing, like you're just being bros with them. They have one day, there's like a cross-dressing day or something, and you dress up in a dress, and your comrades are so impressed. They're like, wow, like he dances so well like a woman. And all of a sudden, like 5 years later, you have to go see the doctor in the army. And the doctor is like, okay, and narcs on you, and basically kicks you out of the army because you're assigned female at birth. And then you get to meet Chairman Mao, because they think you're amazing, because they think you're like the modern Mulan, which implies that they think that you're a woman who dressed up as a man to do courageous acts in the army. Yeah, so that's Guo Zhengqing in a nutshell. It was very hard to find information about him, like online. There is a movie about him, but it's fictionalized and he's a girl. And all the records talking about him, like, refer to him as a woman. And he's actually a pretty cool guy. Like, he moved to a factory town, started working in a factory, like, had very few material possessions, but like gave what he had to other people. And I just think he was like a cool dude who died in peace. And it's sad that the only way that people remember him is as a woman, which I think is like very misguided. And like, who would dress up as a boy for 5 years straight, like nonstop, 24/7, 365, and just fight in the army just to like, you know, dress up as a boy? That doesn't make any sense. Guo Zhengqing is a boy. He changed his name back to Guo Zhengqing, which is why I'm referring to him this way. And so as I was writing my artist statement for him, I was writing like all this stuff, like yada yada, he's a boy, he's a trans masculine elder, and then I was writing like, I want to honor him in the way that I think he authentically is, and the way that he sees himself, and the way that I think he would want to be honored. And I literally started crying, like as I was writing this. I'm crying a little right now, but it's like I just stopped and like, oh my god, and then I continued, and then I cried a little more, and then I keep writing it, and I think it's very cool because that was the first time I cried in like a year or something. And it just made me really happy to like find like a trans masculine elder and ancestor, and to be able to like do the work of sort of allowing him to have his self-determination and autonomy like persist through as long as this peace exists.
This is Naseem. I was just so immersed in that story that I'm like, okay, I have to like shift gears and think about my art now. So the piece that I'm going to be talking about is actually right above my head. So yeah, to start off, I want y'all to kind of look at the main subject of the print, which is the being sitting cross-legged holding 2 pomegranates. I'm describing it in case folks can't see it, because it's kind of small from the back. Yeah, so the main subject of this print is what is referred to as a div or a demon in Zoroastrianism or Persian folklore / mythology. And for more context, in Hinduism, the linguistic equivalent is deva, which refers to a divine being. And so there's this kind of like duality of how these beings are kind of demonic and seen as evil, or also in some ways like villainized and associated with queerness, whereas they're also in, you know, other cultures they're seen as divine beings. And I kind of wanted to play with that duality and like, you know, think of it as like a whole being rather than something that is just divine or just demonic. And in a lot of Persian folkloric stories, these beings oftentimes do the opposite of what human beings tell them to do. And I think that that's incredibly queer, because screw what other people tell you to do. So yeah, I just really like how subversive their narratives are. And, you know, in a lot of like heteronormative ways of telling Persian folklores. They're like exclusively like portrayed as evil beings, but I decided to take this matter into my own hands and queerify the heck out of it. And so yeah, they're very special to me, and I actually draw a lot of inspiration from Mohtar Paki, who's another Persian East Bay artist. I would recommend checking out his website. He's really cool. And yeah, so this art was definitely inspired by him, and also like my connection to like human queer Persian ancestors is very limited, and so I decided to draw this connection myself and like really think about history and try to connect with mythical beings that I can interpret for myself as a sign of my ancestors, because you know, some queer person thousands of years ago was probably like, hey, let me create this really cool thing with hooves. And think of it as a beautiful being. And somehow the cis heads decided to turn it into an evil being. But yeah, just to talk a little bit more specifically about the print, the setting of this is in Darband, which is kind of in the foothills of Mount Kochal in Tehran. And this area is incredibly beautiful, where it's like, you know, like filled with like restaurants and hookah lounges, and there's like fruit vendors, and the streets are like, there's a lot of like traditional architecture, and it's just really like streets intended for the purpose of being social and like engaging in pleasure and like eating good food, and being in nature at the same time, which I feel like I don't really get to experience in the US, because a lot of streets are just meant for commuting and getting from point A to point B, and not really like stopping and like enjoying yourself and getting a chance to just like relax with friends. And so I really wanted to, in this piece, just capture a moment of like stillness and like pleasure, while also just being queer and being who you are, and you know, just coming as you are. And I also really love fruit, so there's fruit on there. I don't know how deep I can make this. It's a little fruity, thank you. I'll hand it over.
Hi, Karishma. So I'll actually show you my print really quickly, and I'll show again in a minute, but just so you get it. I can hold it up for now. Thanks. I appreciate it. So I'm going to preface that I grew up with my nani and my nana, which would be my grandma and my grandpa. In my family, we call them Dadi and Nana because we cheat. And everyone just calls them the same thing. But so I grew up with them, and my dada, he would tell me all these stories of like Hindu myths and like the stories of them, and just kind of like, it's kind of crazy. They had like, you know, people who would like make limbs out of soap and just like get new heads and be like, I want more arms. And he'd tell me these crazy stories. And so, you know, later in my life, I was kind of like, okay, so there's these stories, and some of them are like, oh, I want to do this dance, but only women are allowed to do this dance. And so they would temporarily become women, you know, and they'd be like, this is not queer. This is not trans. Never, never, never. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of like bullshit, and a big fat lie, but okay. And I actually went and I, you know, looked at some books. I was like, okay, maybe they, you know, explain this away, but maybe I'll find some original, authentic content. And so I actually found this book, and it was like Shikandi and Other Tales They Don't Tell, okay, is what the book's called. And in this book, every chapter ends with, okay, and this is why it's not queer and trans. And I was like, okay, I don't like that, not at all. And if you think back, and maybe you don't know this, but in the British colonial period, they kind of took away everything. And everything I kind of learned about Hinduism as a child was like, we love everyone equally, and you know, these kinds of things don't matter. And then all of a sudden they really, really mattered. And then it turns out British colonial period said, oh, this is very illegal, we don't like this, and they destroyed a lot of history. And that's really depressing, and I didn't really like that answer. So I decided I was going to kind of take everything I had read and make up a goddess of my own. And so that's what my whole series is about, is this goddess that is a lesbian, and she is kind of like outcast for a bit, and this is her, and this was kind of my original concept of like what she looked like. And there's some myths where this guy, for doing bad things, is actually covered in vulva, and I really just liked that. I wanted a woman covered in vulva. So that's kind of like a big detail, but I also took other things I've learned in my life, like nose rings on the left side are for good luck, and that's the only side in my family we're allowed to do that, and it's very bad. My cousin had to take hers out because they're like, no, we don't do that. And like, this is about having your hair a certain length and how you wear it, and things kind of my family really, really drilled into me. And so basically I just made the story of this Hindu lesbian goddess, and she gets a happy ending that isn't explained away, and that's kind of where it goes into. And I'm going to switch and show you a different print. And so this print is actually her and her lover. And basically she's this outcast goddess, and she has this worshiper that goes into her temple. And there is this, I don't want to call it a thing, but I'm going to call it a thing anyway, that we do. And you kind of give an offering, okay? And we call it prasad. And my dadi would always do fruits from her garden, or like almonds, and just like, you know, food. And you have it blessed. And I really like the tomatoes from my dadi's garden, and I help her grow them. And it's just one of my favorite activities, and I just love eating tomatoes. I think they're great. Very pretty. Naseem, I think you've explained it well. I just like tomatoes. And so basically they're in this temple, and the goddess is like, damn, that tomato looks really good. And the worshiper offers some of it to her. And then she's like, oh, I don't have a knife. So she invites her back to her house because she thinks she's cute. And so she goes back to her house, and they like garden. And then they have this like weird little romance where they pick tomatoes together. And like she keeps inviting her back like every single day. She's like, oh, come pick some tomatoes with me. We'll have a jolly good time. And then at the end of like tomato season, she starts freaking out. She's like, what are we gonna do? Like, what's my excuse for being here? But there's other fruit. They grow other fruits, and they still like, you know, keep doing their thing. And they fall in love and enjoy tomatoes together. And that's kind of just their happy little story. And so this is kind of like the goddess that like I wish kind of still existed, or maybe she did and it got erased, but she's here again now, at least. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Indigo. I feel bad because my print is not on this floor, and I did not ask for it to be printed so I could hold it up, but I hope that makes you go downstairs. It is a print that I did called Tea Time. My current hand, my tattoo here, pouring a teapot up to my younger hands. And I would say like something that I didn't, oh, what the heck? Okay, this is not so yeah, this is wow. Thank you. But yeah, so I think something that others have kind of touched upon, but is that one thing I didn't really think about when I started Queer Ancestors Project was the fact that researching and like reflecting on my own, I guess, past and the things that I learned growing up, there is a lot of pain that is associated with like doing that, and a lot of grief, because you know a lot of the knowledge that was passed down to me were from people in my family that were not the best representation for me, and who I didn't have like the most healthy relationships with. And it's also hard when a lot of that information that you're told is very cis heteronormative. And so, yeah, I think that was definitely something that I learned right away, especially in creating this print. I knew this was a print that I had wanted to create. That was the first thing that popped into my head. And when I was younger, I used to go to this little Chinese breakfast place with my sibling and my dad. And I remember that he used to tell me, like, afterwards that we could wash our hands in the tea. And also another thing that my family sometimes does is, like, wash the dishes in tea before as sort of a ritual. And I never really understood why. I was just like, okay, I'll do it, I guess. When I was researching about it, when I was reflecting on this memory, I learned that tea has like antibacterial properties, so it can be good for washing your hands. And so I wanted to kind of reclaim this memory and knowledge for myself, and that had been really painful for me to recall, and often like it made me feel like I pushed away my culture and my community a lot because of what the grief associated with that. But this was kind of print. I modeled the teapot after a teapot that we had growing up, and being able to carve each individual piece of that pot, and like my hands, and my family like hated tattoos, so I was like, fuck you, you know? And it was a really like healing process, and I think doing something physical was really, yeah, it really felt good, in a way to process and ruminate on those feelings that I had. And also just to share that with the other people in this space. I have to say that one of the best gifts, I think it's the best gift I've ever gotten, was from, was from someone in, no, it was from, oh, what can I say? Okay, it was from Jason. I bought a box, and I was like, I have no idea what's in it, and it was that teapot. And it was in 2 teacups in pink, which is amazing. I didn't even know that existed. And that was just, yeah, I think I cried a little bit, but yeah, I think it just shows like the full circle of this and how immersed and like connected you are with the other people in this program. And yeah, it's a very vulnerable space to be in when you're sharing these histories. So yeah.
Hi everyone, Jason speaking now. For me today, I'll be sharing a little bit about this print right above me. It's titled Beau Brown Presente, and I guess I'll start off by describing what's actually on it. But it's a portrait of Beau Brown, who is a white, working class, radical, butch dyke lesbian who was a freedom fighter until the day she died. And around her are 2 acronyms that are kind of like coming out of like a gunshot. So they're like little bangs that read FDP for Fuck the Police, and GJB for George Jackson Brigade. And behind her is a wall of fire. And at the bottom reads a quote that says, "We are cozy, cuddly, armed, and dangerous, and we will raise the fucking prisons to the ground." So yeah, that's the print. I was actually thinking about this idea for a while now, but I wasn't sure I was actually going to carve it just because of time constraints and like other things. But the workshop was actually extended for a few months in December due to the pandemic, and Beau Brown passed away, I think sometime in October or November. And so I just felt like the more I thought about it, the synchronicity of all of those things happening at the same time, like really pushed me to look into carving a print in honor of her and her memory. And so, yeah, I guess with my process, I started by reading things. I actually came across a lot of zines, a lot of interviews. There's actually a documentary about her called The Gentleman Bank Robber, which I'll get a little bit more into later. But yeah, it was really cool because, you know, I learned that she was part of the George Jackson Brigade, which was an armed underground like revolutionary group in the Pacific Northwest around the 70s. And they would basically, yeah, participate in a lot of militant actions that supported prisoners, that was, you know, against the empire, against imperialism, capitalism, and so many other causes. And she actually became famous for robbing banks and evading capture because she would show up and dress up as a man. And so they were looking for a man, and they would never be able to find her, which is really cool, and that's how she got the nickname Gentleman Bank Robber. But eventually she was caught and was sent to prison for, I think, 8 years. And when she was released, she dedicated basically the rest of her life to, you know, different inside-outside prisoner groups, and she supported lots of different organizations dedicated to, you know, the fight against the prison industrial complex, and one of which is Critical Resistance. So Bo actually helped organize the first Critical Resistance conference in 1998 in Berkeley, and she remains a close friend and movement partner of the organization, where I have been organizing for the past 3 years. And so in all of this research and all of this work, it was really cool to basically learn about a direct ancestor from my political home and from the abolition movement that I basically came up in. And I just feel like, yeah, it's been really special to learn from her and to hear her stories and to learn from her experiences to help inform how I organize and how I show up in spaces. And so, yeah, finally, I guess in my process, I was trying to look up, of images of her, right, to carve. There aren't many on the internet, but I did find one that was actually a print of her made by Amari Robinson, who is actually a former QAP artist. And so there was a sort of full circle moment there where I was, learning about her through other people who were trying to honor her, and basically other descendants. And so that kind of that discovery made me realize that a lot of ancestors work is not just about the ancestors, but also about finding other people, other descendants who are trying to honor them. And so that collective honoring, right? And so it was a really powerful moment for me. And the last thing I'll share is I reached out to a CR comrade of mine who was actually here at the reception a few weeks ago, and they connected me with Bo Brown's partner, who is still around. And so after all of this over, I saved one print that I made to send to this person. And so, with the hope that we can continue to keep Bo Brown's name and spirit alive. So, yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, Jasmine. My friend is also downstairs. Karishma, do you?
Sorry.
Yikes. Okay. No, my friend's also downstairs. I don't have a printout, but you should all go take a look at it. It is blue on gray, and it depicts a hand, a tiara, a number of other things sorted in the middle. And just kind of as a warning, I'm going to talk briefly about Black trans death. I'll probably get emotional. So yeah, my print, I'm going to tell the story of the person that it's about and not so much the story of the print, but I talk lots in my artist statement about the visual imagery of the visual culture, so you should go check it out. But this is a print about a lot of things. So I did not think this through. I was born on November 28, 1998. Which is a day that a trans woman named Rita Hester was lost to violence in Massachusetts. And if you Google Rita Hester's name, most of the things that will come up are about her death. This is sort of a phenomenon that we see a lot around the loss of trans women in this country. nobody writes about them, nobody's interested in all the amazing work that they're doing until they're lost, usually tragically to violence. Rita Hester's death is sort of the origin story, is the political event that caused the first Trans Day of Remembrance, which is an annual event that happens in November to honor the trans people who we've lost. And I remember when I was, kind of researching, I sort of work in queer, support work, and I often throw events for Trans Day of Remembrance. And I realized that I didn't really know the story of it. And so I looked into it, and what I found, of course, was that Rita Hester died the very night that I was born, about an hour and a half before, about a coast away from Massachusetts to here. I was born in Berkeley, California. And I found that Rita was often found dancing on tabletops in punk bars, which is something that I grew up doing. Rita loved reptiles. She had a snake. I grew up with a pet lizard, gecko, whatever. She was this vibrant, loud person. She was also a Sagittarius like I am. And I found myself really finding it difficult to even discover details about her life. So much of what I could find was about the night of her death, about her loss. And I wanted more details. I wanted to know, who was she friends with? What kind of punk music did she listen to? What was her favorite piece of jewelry? What kind of socks did she wear? And I couldn't. It was hard enough for me to find out that she was a Sagittarius. I want to know the rest of her chart. And so, I began thinking a lot, as I often do, about how a focus on death turns our deaths into spectacle, and a focus on death reduces our life. And I wanted to talk about birth, I wanted to talk about rebirth, and I wanted to talk about embodiment. And I'll let you take a look at the print. My print has to do with the undying life of Rita Hester and sort of honoring that and carrying it with me every day. So, thank you.
Hi everyone. So during QAP, I made a series of prints that were inspired by the stories of Hawaiian goddess and ancestor. Her name was Hi'iaka Ipoliopale. And in our context, we could read her stories and be like, wow, she was super fucking queer. And of course, it's not the words that she would use to describe herself. So I'll acknowledge that. In my series of prints, I focus on how, in her stories, she leaves lessons for queer and Mahu Hawaiians, like now, to know how to love each other. I have one print that's about pleasure, one print that's about welcoming change and transformation, but the one I'm going to talk about now is behind me. This one right here. And the focus is on being committed, like commitment and being devoted to each other. And it's entitled, Wherever You Go, There Too Shall I. And it is based off of the story of Hi'iaka and one of her lovers, because she had many, but one of her lovers named Wahina Umau. And the story of them is that they basically go on this huge odyssey together that starts from the southern point of the Hawaiian Islands, goes across the archipelago and back. And in this journey together, they do some crazy shit. They sail through storms. They swim in a river of blood. They challenge chiefs. And at one point, they face off this giant eel. So in this print, you'll see that around the two figures is a big eel, referring to that story. And from these stories, from this relationship, I saw modeled what it means to love someone and be really committed to them. To say like, hey, no matter what's gonna come our way, like, I'm gonna be with you. So, and I know that that's the kind of love that doesn't just exist in these stories from long ago. I actually see it now in like modern, like relationships now between queer Hawaiians. And I saw that modeled in
in this love. The two figures in this print are actual like real-time Hawaiian activists and lovers. Their names are Malia Osarios on the right and Jamaica Osarios on the left. And before they actually met, they lived individual lives fighting to protect the lands and waters of Hawaii and indigenous land all over. But in 2019, they actually met because they were both protesting against the construction of a 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. And they met because they happened to be paired in a small group of people who chained their bodies to a cattle guard to block the path of a construction truck. And since then, they have written publicly about how that moment was the beginning of a deeper and longer commitment that they would eventually make to each other. So flash forward 3 years, they are now sweethearts. They have been organizing together now, as opposed to in their separate paths. They organize together for the demilitarization and deoccupation of Hawaii. Not only that, they're married. They actually just had a baby who was born a few months ago. So cute. So yeah, that's what this print is about. It's a reminder to queer Hawaiians, like we've been here, and this is the cloth that we're cut from. We're cut from knowing how to love each other and like swear to each other that we won't leave each other.
Hello, this is daney. The print I'll be talking about tonight is this one, all the way over here. And it's called An Offering to Anagalai. The print is part of my series, which is a poem that I wrote, and the text on it says, "And when does an offering become healing?" And it is a portrait of myself cutting off my hair with kitchen scissors, which is something that I did not only as a child, but as a teenager and as an adult, embarrassingly enough. So in my research in QAP, I wanted to connect to, I think, ancestry. I'm Filipino, got the earrings on. And I wanted to connect to some of the mythology from like pre-colonial Filipino, times. There are a lot of different cultural regions in the Philippines, and so I was focusing mainly on where my family is based in from my knowledge. So my research led me to looking up a lot of pre-colonial Tagalog gods and goddesses and deities. And one that's really struck my interest was the goddess Anagalai, who is the goddess of lost things. And I just thought that was really interesting because I feel like it's kind of vague, like lost as in people that you've lost in your life, or like a sock that you lost in the laundry, or but I kind of wanted to interpret it into like me and who I am as like a queer non-binary person, because I feel like I've lost a lot of time in my life trying to be a person that I'm not. And to me, that was a connection that I had with Anagalai. She also happens to be the child of the deity Lakapati, who is actually like a gender non-conforming deity and the deity of fertility, which I also thought was very interesting for there to be kind of like a gender fluid deity who happened to birth this child who is the goddess of lost things. And in turn, Anagalai gave birth to Jan Masalanta, who is the goddess of lovers. And so to me, I was feeling like, oh, Anagalai is in between these generations of fertility and love, and in between those things is someone who is a protector or someone that helps people search for things that are lost from them. And I just thought that was really profound and really interesting to me. And so in my own way, I imagine myself cutting my hair when I was a kid, cutting my hair when I was a teenager, and just thinking about like how much of that is a tie to me and I guess the way that I present in my gender, the way that I present as a person, and imagining myself cutting off my hair, like physically losing the hair that I have on my head and offering that to Anagalai in return to help heal from the time that I feel like I've lost pretending to be the things that I'm not.
Wow, thank you everyone so much for those deep stories. So we have one more question, and I would love to hear, what do you hope to incorporate into your future practice from the Queer Ancestors Project? What do you hope to incorporate into your future practice from QAP?
Okay, I forgot about this question. I think our best reaction was the same too.
But I think for me, I just really appreciated having time every week that I knew I would dedicate to making art and making really personal art. Because QAP was really healing for me as a person and just like, I don't know, navigating my life, I guess. It was a really healing experience, and so I think taking something away from this would just be dedicating time to continue to make art and kind of forcing myself to do it. Yeah.
I really agree with Daney. The only other piece I'll add is that I really want to make art with other people. So much of art I make at 3 a.m. in the garage by myself, and I would actually like to be in a room with other people so that we're creating together.
Hi, Jasmine. I think that something that I was struggling with a lot in QAP that I'm glad or happy with my resolution for was that I often joke that every piece of art that I make has hands, flowers, or both, but those are just the subjects that I like. And usually it's both. And as I was, week to week coming up with new prints and new designs, I kept trying to encourage myself to do something else, to add some diversity of subjects and to not sort of is this reductive, I'm always doing the same thing. And by the end of it, I realized that I actually don't want to make art that isn't the things that I like to make art about, and that I'm okay with the fact that all of my art has flowers in it. I like flowers, my house is full of them. And the thing that I want to take with me is letting myself like the things that I like, and letting art be something that is what I want it to be and not what my professors or the market wants it to be.
Jason speaking. For me, I guess I would say, process. I feel like, I've never been in art school, I've never been to art classes, and so I never learned to have a structure or discipline around making art. And so for us to be making prints literally every week, that was really hard, and I sometimes would be carving up until the last hour, and I just never know what would come out of it. And so throughout QAP, I've really learned to have faith in that process, and just leaning into it, even if I don't know what the final thing will be. And so I feel like that's one thing that I'll take with me. And then the other thing I'll say is just the people, I'm definitely going to lean on all the people here in the future as I make things, for their support and for their ideas and their feedback. I just feel like it's really hard making art alone, and they've really taught me to enjoy it and to lean on them for support. And so,
I will take the recommendation of Trader Joe's dark chocolate with the coconut on it. Rawley, you know what I'm talking about. Those are good. I learned about those. No, yes, I need those on hand. That is simply what fuels my art practice now, my creativity. But I think I echo what everyone said about community, definitely. And I also think I don't think I quite got there, honestly, if I'm being honest, but I am very hard on myself. And the whole time I was I don't know what my style is. I don't feel like I'm an artist. I feel like I'm closer to thinking those things now, and I think that throughout this, just creating things, and not being so hard on myself and actually enjoying, like leaning into the joy that I felt and leaning into the grooves that I was carving in, felt really good. And actually sometimes I would still not like what I created right when I saw it, but then if I would take time and then see it like a couple of weeks later, I would be like, oh, that's actually pretty good. Like, so yeah, I think definitely thinking of myself as an artist and being confident in my artwork.
Oh, you said it so well, Indigo. This is Karishma again. I think during QAP, I kind of had this concept, and I call it committing to the bit. And it's basically like, whatever you're gonna do, just go for it all in. Don't like go halfway. And so I call it committing to the bit, and like somewhere around a few months into QAP, I was like, okay, I'm gonna commit to the bit. And I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna dedicate the hours I want to dedicate into pieces. And I only like using the one nib, which is the smallest, and you'll kind of see how that pans out. Like it's super, super tiny. And I love doing details, and I committed to the bit, and I said, okay, I will sit here for the 20, 30 hours I need to make these super tiny details. And that's something I'll kind of carry with me. As many of you have said before, working with friends is also so lovely. Yeah, it's just part of the process. I want to keep going, committing to the bit and doing it with friends.
This is Naseem. I think QAP really taught me to like embrace the my art making ethic or whatever that I have already, and to like really embrace the process that I have for myself. I think I've always kind of wanted to change the way I naturally work, which is like on deadline and like really last minute things. Like my housemates who are here really saw me like carving so hard that I would nick myself accidentally like multiple times, and there was like shavings like all over the table and underneath the table, like everywhere, literally like 3 minutes before I had to go into the studio. And I would carve during my lunch break at work. I would stay late after work carving right before going to QAP. And I think I really needed that time push to actually complete my work. And it always had a positive outcome, so I don't regret procrastinating. And I think QAP has taught me to be okay with that. Of course, if I, budgeted my time more consistently, maybe I'll have cleaner lines, but who needs clean lines? Like if you look really closely on my prints, they're extremely scrappy, and I have learned to love that. Initially I wasn't okay with it, but I think just really being okay with how I am is what I'm taking away from QAP.
Hi, this is Cairo. I'm really very much in tune with the themes of just like being accepted and like coming as how you are. In my own art practice, I'm mostly a painter, and I struggle a lot with perfectionism, I think, because I have a chip on my shoulder because I didn't go to art school. I am the hardest critic on myself to try to, make up for that. And so nothing is ever good enough. I hyper focus on tiny little details that no one will ever see. And QAP really helps me get past it, because I would make a print, I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like, oh my god, this eyebrow is fucked up. And then it would come out of the press, and everyone would think, oh my god, that's so amazing. Like, oh guys, the eyebrow. And then no one would care. I'm like, oh wow, no one cares. In the best possible way. Like, I'm the only one who cares about this, and I'm just causing myself strife by creating these rules for myself. And printmaking inherently, I think, helps me, because once you make a print, that's it. Like, you can't, it's not like painting where you can go over and over and fix the tiniest thing. And that's really helped me in my own art practice to just step back, look at the big picture, and realize that other people are appreciating my art in ways that I don't see, and no one cares.
Hi, it's Rawley. I think what I'm gonna take with me, something that I learned in QAP is that there's really no limitation to what you can make. I feel like I was lucky enough to be a part of QAP for the past almost 2 years, and I look back on the work that I made when I first joined QAP, and it's so different from the work that I'm making now. And I feel that just having the support of a group that, kind of like what you said, Cairo, just will always love your work and hype you up and be so proud of you no matter what you make. It just pushed me to make work that was more and more complex and work larger and really just not be afraid to try things, because I knew that I would have a group of homies at QAP who would just be like, wow, that's so cool and it's so good, like no matter what I would do. And I felt the same way about all of their work, and I feel like it really allowed us all to grow so much as artists and as people in such a short amount of time. And so now I feel so much more confident in the work that I'm making because I know that it resonates with me and it resonates with all my friends in my Queer Ancestors Project cohort, and it just makes my heart really warm that we all have each other and that we all push each other to be the best artists that we can be. So I'm gonna take that with me for sure and keep striving to make things that are crazily complex, but that hopefully will work out in the end.
Well, I think what's so special about QAP is that we all got to explore such different themes, and we're all very different people and got to show our different styles. And I think that that's what I'll take with me moving on as an artist, is to embrace like otherness, and I'm definitely exploring that, like, and it was during my time in QAP that I've been thinking a lot about my gender and how I present. And yeah, I just think that the support and I just am so proud of this group. And I will take like exploring myself through like my future work for sure.
Okay, lots of wisdom there that we can all learn from. Thank you, everyone, and thank you all. I'm sure I'm not the only one that noticed as the evening was unfolding, it got colder and colder and colder in here. So I'm going to invite you all to stand up. We can actually clear away the chairs. We can stack the chairs, the back 2 rows. And there is so much food to enjoy. There is going to be an art sale. Hang on just a sec. There's going to be an art sale happening over there. And we're going to set up some tables with some buttoning. You can make your own buttons over here. And there's tons and tons of food to enjoy. So please hang around, warm up, and thank you so much for coming, everyone.